Hey everyone, today what I want to do for you is very simply go over the residential real estate contract and address the most important categories. So if this is the kind of thing you're interested in, stay tuned. Diving right in, guys, what you see in front of you is a multi-board residential real estate contract. And I'm not going to go into every single detail, but I will highlight the major portions that pertain to buyers and sellers and point out a few things that you may be aware of. So, starting right at the top, you're looking at the first page. By the way, there are 13 pages, and every single page has to be initialed on the bottom except for the last one. So, starting with page one at the top, obviously, line one is the parties that are involved, buyers and sellers. Now, uh, direct your attention to point number four. It talks about dual agency. If your agent will be representing both parties in this transaction, this line will be checked. And this is something that you definitely need to be aware of because you might have a few more questions. Line number five, where it says real estate, this is where all the pertinent information is listed for the property that is being sold. Scrolling down to line 15, we'll be looking at fixtures and personal property that is conveyed from the seller to the new owner, to the buyer. And every single line item here will be checked, starting with lines 19 all the way through 28. Now, I've also highlighted line item 30 where it says items not included. You definitely want to pay attention to this if you're a buyer, because in here you might see refrigerator or freezer or washer or dryer, which obviously will let you know that the seller intends on keeping those items for themselves. So you have to be aware of that. Now, if you're a seller and you want to make sure that there's certain items that stay with you when you go, make sure that you put those items down here where it is listed, line 30. Of course, you'll be filling out this contract with your real estate agent and they're going to be walking you through all of this, but just as a FYI, it's just something to be aware of and know. Moving on down to line 36. This is obviously an extremely important portion here. Oops. Line 36, purchase price and payment. This is where the purchase price or the agreed upon price will be listed. If there's any credits to be issued at closing, it'll be listed here. And line 42 is the space where the earnest money is documented. Normally, it is 1% of the sales price. Oh, and I've also highlighted on page one at the bottom where it says buyer initial and seller initial, where each party has to initial the page. Moving on to page two, starting with line 49, the closing. This is where you will list the date which you have agreed upon to complete this transaction, to actually close. Down to line 55, you're looking at the different financing options. If the person is going to be financing this property or uh, borrowing, taking on a loan, you will see that line 56 will be filled out where it says loan contingency. Now, scrolling down to line 84, if the person is planning on buying this property cash, this is where that will be initialed and checked, where it says cash transaction with no mortgage. Now, there's another option when it comes to purchasing the property, and it's at line 94, cash transaction with mortgage allowed, which means the buyer has a choice. They could either pay for this property with cash or they can choose to finance it, whatever works best for them, whatever they decide to do. Scrolling down to line number 110, you will see all the different statutory disclosures that have to be initialed and signed by both parties. This is just a very standard and normal thing to go through. It's part of our legal procedures. And I'm not going to get too much into the legality of things. Scrolling down to line 116, we're looking at different prorations, the two things that um, I want to point out our line numbers 122 and line 129. The general real estate taxes, normally they're prorated at 100 or 105%. It really depends on the area that you're in. And this is definitely something that your real estate agent can assist you with. And line number 129, very simply, it states that the seller represents that if there's a homeowner association, this is the monthly or quarterly or annual payment, as whatever the case may be. Scrolling down to page 4, line 135, it talks about the attorney review period, which normally takes place after the home inspection has been completed. I'm not going to go into every single detail, but in case you have more questions about it, this is definitely an area that you can read or discuss with your real estate agent. Line number 155, it does not happen very often, but occasionally when there's an investor who's purchasing the property, they might waive the professional inspections. So this is the line where that will be checked in case the buyer decides to waive their inspection. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen occasionally. Line 158 is obviously the paragraph about the actual inspection and notices. Again, there is a lot of legal terms here, which I'm not going to get into. The main thing that you want to be aware of when it comes to the inspection is that it is completed within 5 days of signing of the contract. And then as soon as you receive the inspection from your home inspector, you want to make sure that it is forwarded to your lawyer with the certain items that you would like to get taken care of. If you're the buyer, of course. If you're the seller, you're just waiting to receive the inspection and the request from the buyer. Next, line 191, homeowner insurance, very simply states that yes, you have to have insurance. In certain areas, flood insurance may be required, and this is line 197. Moving down to line 202, condominium common interest association documents, it very simply states that any declarations, any guidelines, conditions, documents have to be conveyed to the buyer prior to closing. Here's some more legalities, which I'm going to skip over. Going down to line item 262, the plat of survey. This is definitely something that you do want to get before the closing. So you have an outline of what your plot looks like. And it is an expense that should be covered by the sellers and not the buyers. Okay, next. Line number 280, condition of real estate and inspection. It pretty much states that the condition of the property needs to be conveyed to the buyer in broom clean condition with all the fixtures and attachments as outlined in this contract. Moving down to line number 285, seller representations. The important stuff here is to make sure that if you go down to items 297, 299, 301, and 303, the seller represents and states that to their best knowledge, as far as they're aware, they're not aware that real estate taxes will be going up or improvements will be happening to the place or there will be a special assessment increase, et cetera, et cetera. So we definitely want to keep an eye on these things. If these are checked as there is the potential of improvements happening, you want to find out how much and what, because that will definitely become the buyer's burden once they buy the property. Oh, and by the way, as I'm scrolling through these things and going through it rather quickly here, it's okay not to remember everything. Remember, this is just a general overview of the contract. There are 13 pages, and if this is the first time that you're looking at this, it's okay not to understand everything that I'm saying or to get everything. That's absolutely fine. Let's go to the next page. I'll skip again a lot of the legalities here. All the way down to line 375 on page 9, sale of buyer's real estate. Now, this is something that does happen quite often. Many times a buyer will have to sell their current property in order to purchase the new property. And this is where your real estate agent will uh, list that information if that is the case. Line 472 talks about the possession after closing. Normally, as soon as the transaction is completed and it closes, the new owner takes possession of the property. But in some cases, there may be a delay, or the current owner may want to rent out the place from the new owners for a few days just so that their transition and move can be a little bit smoother. So this is where you will look for that information, and this is where you can put it in the contract to make sure that there's no confusion. And we're going to go all the way down to the last page, which is page 13. This is obviously where all the parties sign and date the contract and actually make it official. Thank you for joining me today, guys. I hope you found this information beneficial and useful. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out with questions, comments, and suggestions. I will see you all next week.